What up, Wizards? It's Dev. Mtg. We like it at Magic, and in case you hadn't noticed by now, kind of a big boy, which means from time to time, I like me a big old boy. Why do you think I got Ziggy over here? All my friends are fat, which means I was really excited when the new set came out. Everybody online chirping about how it's nothing but 5 and 7 drop creatures. That's my kind of set. I can get down with a fat boy. So on that note, get ready, because I got a pig in the ground. I got the beer on ice. And all my rowdy friends are coming over tonight. Let's take a look at Kroxa and Kunoros. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And you better remember to like the video and subscribe too, because that way you'll get like 20 hoes. That's a lot of hoes. I just wanted to keep rapping. I felt the spirit in me. And also, I hear you guys like the rapping. It helps with the metrics and all that. So, yeah, what are we doing today? What are we segueing into poorly? Kroxa and Kunoros is the deck tech today. KK Slider over here because his initials are KK, and also half of him is a dog. It's an Animal Crossing reference. You guys remember when we all played Animal Crossing for like 4 months, and then we never spoke of it again? That was weird. What a weird time to be alive. Oh, references. Anyway, Magic cards. Magic cards are cool, especially this one, a giant boy and his dog. One of you I played a lot of in Standard when you were in Standard, and the other one I wanted to play a lot of, but you weren't super good. I'll leave you, if you weren't around back then, I'll leave you to guess which one is which. But it doesn't really matter what they were back then. What matters is what happens when you push them together and make them kiss. And it turns out you get a 6/6 with 3 keyword abilities. Vigilance and Lifelink go very, very well together. A lot of opponents that want to attack you to win the game are going to scoop to this guy just because of that. But that's not the important part of the card. Now, the important part is the thing that actually makes him kind of tough to build a deck around, because you got to have at least 5 other things in your graveyard plus the thing you want to reanimate when this thing enters the battlefield. But if you can meet that criteria, you get your 6/6 lifelink, vigilance, blah, blah, and then you also get the biggest guy in your graveyard. So it's just kind of ridiculous. They have to deal with both of these things. And at first, this reminded me of like Olivia, the Crimson Bride, which made me at first feel excited. And then I remembered that Olivia wasn't very good. I wanted it to be really good. Never actually was. So I was like, oh, how about this? But it turns out that they kill your Kroxa and Kunoros and the other thing sticks around, which is kind of huge. Also, Kroxa and Kunoros 6/6, whereas Olivia was a 3-power thing, and that's just better. And when we can actually pull all this off, it is a whole roll of fruitcake. It is a lot of fun to actually make these things happen. But again, it's kind of tough. You got to have at least 6 cards in your yard. So you got to be pitching cards like a businessman in the 1980s wearing suspenders. Here's my card. Here's my card. You got to be putting little paper hats and aprons on Kroxa and Kunoros. Get them a job down at the local Steak and Shake, and they're going to be pitching milkshakes, just bringing our boys to the yard. We've got like 13 or more cards in this deck, really, that are dedicated to putting cards in our graveyard so that we can trigger this ability. Now, on that note, what I could do is go ahead and show you all of the cards we're playing, what put other cards in the bin in it, but I'm not going to do that just yet, because those cards aren't the exciting part of the deck. To me, the exciting part of the deck is all the other big fat men that we're playing, because we're going to bend those, we're going to reanimate them, we're going to be having a great time, right? So let's take a look at all the other giant women in the deck, starting with the 2 copies of Atraxa. That's right, just 2 copies of Atraxa in the deck. I didn't go all out here because there's another large entity that I'd like to play, but Atraxa's tried and true. We've only had her for like a set or 2, right? But at this point, we know that Atraxa is the main Atraxan, whatever. I'm trying to make that pun work in Standard when it comes to reanimator decks, and there's a reason for that. I mean, just look at this clip here. It turns out that you think this deck's going to be kind of bad against like mono red, and then all you got to do is reanimate Atraxa on turn 4, and you're just going to make them upset. They get so mad at that. So if you can actually get an Atraxa out ahead of schedule, or even on schedule some of the time, it's going to win you the game. But the reason that I'm only playing 2 copies of this pretty lady here is because I'm playing 3 copies of Italy. Now, here's the first thing I have to say about this card, and I feel like I do have to say it, is that every time I see this card's name in print, I hear it. This is going to sound weird, but I think you know what I'm saying. I hear it in my head the way a Jawa would say it. Now, I'm in some way obligated, morally obligated, informationally obligated, whatever, to tell you this card can flip over. But I should also tell you, in the interest of data and subjectivity, whatever, you need this. that I've probably played like 30 games of this deck to test for this video. I have never flipped this card over. I've never once done that. We do have green mana in the deck. We have treasure tokens and stuff. You can theoretically flip it over. I've never had to do that ever once. Because it turns out just getting a 7/7 trampler and also 2 other things is usually enough to put the game away, especially when sometimes you get into these, strings, these combo strings where you go like, boom, a tally, that's the left jab, and you hit him with that right hook, attracts off the top of the library, just puts him down, man. If you can't tell, it's actually my favorite thing to reanimate in the deck. More so than Kroxa, more so than Atraxa. I am always trying to get the dinosaur on the table. And maybe that's because I'm just perpetually 5 years old, but I'm pretty sure it's also because the card's pretty good. Now, I'm playing a couple of medium boys in the deck. Sometimes we'll even reanimate these, like the 1 copy of Shoulder. This can be a great reanimation target. This could be great to hit off a tally or Kroxa and Kunoros or whatever, but even if you just have to pay all 5 mana for it, like, sure, 4 or 5, the ability to activate it in the mid and late game is actually like kind of game threatening, like you just win off of that. But in a lot of cases, just the fact that it's a 4/5 removal spell is going to be enough. I'm only going to play 1 copy of this. I don't think it's like super important for the deck, and you could probably cut it and play something else, but it's been pretty good at like bridging the gap between the early and late game. Again, it's great to get out of your yard with Kroxa and basically have 10 power and a removal spell. So I wouldn't play too many of these, but 1 has been pretty good. But I'm playing another one of that looks a little bit weird, because what do you think we ought to eat tonight? I think we ought sushi. I think that's actually be a pretty good meal. I love sushi's good, but this card, I don't feel as strongly about it as I do sushi. Sushi is delicious, but this card's pretty good too, man. Like, there's a couple of things it can do for you. Basically, get you a form of card advantage, but more importantly, it'll get you the treasures you need to cast that Atraxa or the Kroxa or the Itali or whatever. Let's get to our reanimation spells, because it can't just be Kroxa and Kunoros. I mean, I guess it could, and that would free up 4 slots in the deck. But I feel like if we're going to be putting all these like 7 mana dudes into the graveyard anyway, then we might as well have reanimation spells in our deck. It just makes sense. So I'm playing 2 copies of the Cruelty of Gix. This is the boring one that you've seen before. It does a lot of stuff. But very often I feel like 4 out of 5 times, 8 out of 10, right? It's the same number. That I play this card, I just skip straight to chapter 3 and get the Atraxa or the Itali out of my yard, whatever. Third base coast, just come on, just swinging that arm around, go home, baby. Like, do not stop at first or second or anything like that. Just slide on into home base, buddy. I want you on chapter 3 like most of the time, but sometimes obviously the ability to go grab something from your library or like mess with your opponent's hand or whatever. These are great options, and it's easily the best 5 mana removal spell in Standard. But we've seen it before. I wanted to play with a new card that ended up impressing me a little bit. That's Invasion of Tolvada. The thing with a lot of 5 mana reanimation spells is that's all they do. If you cast Cruelty of Gix and you put it on chapter 3, it was just a 5 mana removal spell and it did nothing else. And it's like really boring and lame, But the thing with Invasion of Tolvada, on the other hand, is that this is way more than a 5 mana removal spell, or at least it gives itself the chance to be, If you do get that Atraxa or that Itali off of it or whatever, you're probably going to be attacking your opponent's face, like 99% of the time, right? But if you don't have a clear line, or if you can just get to the battle more easily, or if you're not going to win that turn, which is surprisingly often like a good reason to hit the battle instead of their face. If you're not going to win that turn anyway, you might as well hit the battle, and then you get this sweet little thing that gives you a token every turn and boosts your tokens. There's not a whole lot in the deck that creates tokens, but there are a few cards between the main and the sideboard. So this will help out some of the things we're already playing, and just like throw blockers in their face to extend the game a little bit. Sometimes against control, it'll just sit on the table and make a token every turn, and they have to deal with that. So it's a cool little card. It is way more than just a 5 mana reanimation spell, and that is pretty cool. We're going to play 4 copies of a pretty obscure card in Standard. I don't know how many guys have really experienced this. I don't know how many of you've seen this, but Fable of the Mirror Breaker, it's a bit of a sleeper in Standard. I don't think I can keep this bit up for too much longer. I was going to do this whole thing where I'm like, oh, we're also playing 4 Blood Tithe Harvester, little known combo in Standard. These cards go really well together. But again, I don't think I can actually keep that up. I'm not that good of an actor, or a good actor at all, in fact. Matter of fact, the only other thing in the deck that we can technically copy with Reflection is the Elder Dragon War. I'm only playing 2 copies of this. It's kind of a sweeper, although in a lot of cases it's not a functional sweeper, but it'll take out like 2, sometimes 3 guys on the soldier side of the table or whatever, and that can be nice. But this is also a 4/4 dragon that can be copied with reflection. It's also a token for the invasion of Tolvada's other half, whatever. So that kind of counts a little bit, but mostly what this does is the second chapter, which is weird because usually the second chapter is the worst chapter on this card. But a lot of times it's kind of a mini Fable of the Mirror Breaker that also functions as a pseudo sweeper or a big creature or both or whatever you need. Pretty versatile thing here, but mostly it's going to let us dump 4 cards in our yard some of the time and then grab, 4 fresh cards. And that's really going to help us once we do play that Kroxa. I'm also running 2 Liliana of the Veilski in this deck. This is a good magic card. It's been a good magic card for freaking years at this point. You could get one for like $15-$16. That's a great price. Remember when you couldn't do that? Or when they were like $85 for a long time? Reprints are nice. But anyway, this lets us dump stuff in our yard. Also a removal spell. Also a Planeswalker. Come on, man. I really want to push 3 copies of this into the deck, but so far 2 has been pretty cozy. And finally, mostly as a device to help us segue into the removal, I'm playing 1 copy of Cathartic Pyre in the deck. Now this could be a Braid or any number of other things if you wanted it to be, but I wanted one more card that was versatile in that it can help us, milkshake our boys and all that, but it can do other stuff. Like that's not the only thing it does. And just like Liliana, this is a removal spell that can also help us dump cards. I wanted that versatility, but again, this doesn't necessarily have to be in the deck. We're not trying to bin 10 cards like a Nickelodeon show. We're just got to bin 5, but sometimes this will make the difference between being able to actually trigger Kiki's ability or not. And as for that removal I was just talking about, we'll fill the deck out with 2 copies of Brotherhood's End. Need a low-end sweeper to take out those mono red decks, the soldiers decks, get the little stuff off our back, graveyard trespassers. There's all kinds of stuff that dies to Brotherhood's End, and if it doesn't kill a bunch of little stuff, it can kill Reckoner Bankbusters. Let's play that card. We've also got 3 copies of Go for the Throat. Never going to kill a Reckoner Bankbuster. Kills most other creatures. Yeah, I know. Here's a whole list of creatures it doesn't kill. Phyrexian Fleshgorger, Steel Seraph, and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, this kills reliably a lot of the important targets in Standard. And finally, we're going to end it with 2 copies of Cut Down. We need to keep our opponents off of our necks in the early game. It's pretty good at doing that. But my goodness, look at all these lands, everybody. There's 26 of them. There's a lot of lands in the deck, but that's because not only do we have, 6 and 7 drops and stuff, but we absolutely must get to at least 5 mana. So we need to run a couple of extra lands in this deck, and it's pertinent to do that anyway. We get to do a couple of tricks. We get to play a bunch of different Triomes in the deck. That'll help us resolve the Atraxas, flip the Italies, and all the other ancillary stuff we have to do. But if we need to draw cards, these will help us do those too. We've got 2 Plaza of Heroes in the deck. That's kind of a neat one. There are a fair number of legends in this thing, and when you need to, this will help you protect that Italia, Atraxa, whatever if you've got open mana. But that was a lot of lands, so you know what I could really go for? I would just love to sit my feet up by the fire and get something nice and hot to sip on. That's right, it's time for a coffee break. This week on the coffee break, Dev has outsourced the sideboard to yours truly. So we'll start with the 3 copies of Duress, which keeps counterspells and farewells and all manner of nasty little vicious things out of your opponent's hand so they can't use them on you. There's also 2 copies of Surge of Salvation in the 1-drop slot of the sideboard to completely atomize the faces of any mono-red opponents we might come across. There's also a single copy of Abrade in the sideboard, along with another copy of Brotherhood's End, bringing the total up to 3 in the deck. Sometimes aggro will beat you, but with these cards, it will be less likely. That is the point of a sideboard. The Wandering Emperor also helps out against these aggro decks, and Lauren of the Third Path is effectively a removal spell on legs. Aside from that, there's Reckoner Bankbuster for the very long games where we need to draw some cards and grind some more, and Unlicensed Hearst for when we come up against unoriginal folks playing the same deck we are. That's all for the coffee break this week. As always, we truly hope you enjoyed your stay here. Now I'll send it back to Dev with the power rankings and, of course, the example game. Take it away, Fat Daddy Diesel Stick. Ooh, Fat Daddy Diesel Stick. What he fitting to do with it? I'm fitting to give you the power rankings. They're right there on your screen. A final score of 69. It's a very nice score, yes. Deck does well in a bunch of categories, man. I mean, it plays a bunch of powerful cards, pretty obvious, and it's got like better defense than a Reanimator deck has any right to. It's got much better versatility than any Reanimator deck has any right to, because most of the cards that are Reanimators or Milkshakes or whatever also do other cool and important things. So again, really versatile for a Reanimator deck. Of course, the resilience is pretty high. It's a Reanimator deck, but it is a little bit slow to start. But it is long, and it is strong, and from what I understand, it's also down to get the friction on. For instance, let's take a look at our example game of the week here against mono white control of all things. We're able to grind things out and live our wildest dreams. Now, we're going to join a game in progress where we have a Liliana of the Veil. An opponent has Reckoner, Bankbuster, and Spirited Companion. They play Lauren of the Third Path to take out our blood token, crew the Bankbuster, and swing in on the Liliana. We'll take the block with the Atsushi we just played to get our treasure tokens. On our next turn, we'll make them sacrifice the Spirited Companion with the Liliana, play a land, cycle the Proving Ground, and get Kroxa and Kunoros. Don't have quite enough to play it, so we'll sit on it. Our opponent starts a series of great turns here with Elspeth Resplendent. They -3 it to get a Spirited Companion, draw a card, swing into the Liliana, and put it on 1. Again, great turn, but there's more to come. We start by having each player discard a card, we ditch a land, they get rid of a Lauren, and then we play Kroxa and Kunoros. Bad thing happens number 1. We only have 5 cards in our yard, so we can't really reanimate anything. We pass turn, our opponent and I each draw a card because of Lauren, and then the Kroxa gets met with a fateful absence pretty quickly. The opponent uses Elspeth Resplendent to give the doggo a counter and flying, get in on the Liliana, and take care of it, and play Wedding Announcement. Again, great turn from the opponent, and they'll have at least one more good one, but we draw the Cruelty of Gigs. However, we have an Atali and the requisite number of treasure tokens to play it, so we go with that. Bad thing happens number 2. All we get is Bloodtithe Harvester, because the only card that came off of our opponent's library was Lay Down Arms, and we don't have any planes, so there's no valid targets for it. That's okay, we have a 7/7 Trampler. Our opponent goes Spirited Companion, and then puts a counter in flying. On the Lauren, plays a second Wedding Announcement, and gets in on our life total, draws 2 off of announcements. Again, amazing turn for opponent. We draw Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but we won't be playing it. We use a Tally to get in on the Elspeth and take care of that problem. And then we do the coolest thing we could possibly do. We cast Cruelty of Gix. We get a Kroxa and Kunoros off of the Cruelty of Gix. And then off the Kroxa and Kunoros, we can end up getting an Atraxa, which then draws us another 4 cards. Once we're in this position, it doesn't even matter if the opponent can get to Farewell. They'll tap the Lauren again to try and get to it, but even if they did get to it, we still have Go for the Throat, Cruelty of Gix, Shieldred, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and Liliana of the Veil, all in our hand. And if we ever draw another Atraxa, we can play it. We have Jetmir's Garden and Plaza of Heroes, so even a Sanctuary Warden isn't enough, an opponent graciously scoops. Good game, opponent. And that wasn't the only one that we won in testing. Obviously, you saw the end of another one in a small clip earlier. But like I said, I played like 30 games or so with this deck for testing, and it was well above 500 in terms of win percentage. But you are going to pay for that. This deck's like $350 in paper. And if you're going to buy it on Arena, you need enough wild cards to choke Mark Rosewater. So good luck with that. But if you can play the deck, I hope that you get a chance to. It is a lot of fun, and you'll be winning a couple of games here and there, son. But for now, I got to start moseying on out of here. Don't worry, we're going to do the couch card of the day, but I'm going to hold you hostage for a second so that we can do all the self-promotion. Don't worry, you can scrub through it, but I really hope you don't, because likes, the subscribes, all that, they really do help around here. And of course, helping out on Patreon helps the most. Honestly, it actually gives me a steady paycheck. Nothing else about my work gives me a steady paycheck, you see. So if you want to help me like pay my bills and continue doing this for a living, throw $1 a month over on Patreon and you can vote on what deck techs and content and stuff we do. That's why I'm doing this video. It's the one the patrons wanted to see. But guess what? You made it through all of the self-promotion, and that means that it's your favorite part of the video. It's the couch card of the day. What's it going to be this time, everybody? Let's find out. It is, oh my goodness, it is an unlimited edition Throne of Bone, ladies and gentlemen. That's a Throne of Bone. Plenty of jokes we can make about that, right? But we won't stay monetized. This is just a single mana for an artifact, and anytime a black spell is cast by any player, you can pay a single mana, and then you'll gain a life. It's not a very good card, to be honest, but I like it. I've always liked the art on it. I like the way these old artifacts look. I love the way anything from Unlimited Edition looks. So maybe if you're mono black, you're playing Commander, and you care about gaining life, you somehow meet all those criteria, throwing a bone might be all right for you, but that's probably the only way that's going to work. And who's doing that? Nobody. Anyway, that is all that we have for this one. We were dancing and singing all night. I hope you took note of the time because it's almost, we got to go, Cinderella. Anyway. What am I doing? That's all I've got for this one. Just make sure you stay tuned. We're going to have more crazy deck techs soon. I'm going to get the patrons right on that. And our next video is going to be I spent $5 on mom. Mother's Day is coming up. I should probably spend more than $5 on my mom, but I will not be spending $5 on your mom. But one way or the other, I'm going to be spending $5 on cards from the new set very soon. And that's always a fun video to do. And you guys somehow really like those. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to get that one in the next couple of days here. But for now, I am Audi 7000 or whatever the kids are saying nowadays. Love you guys. And I'm Dev from the place. I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.